Okay, so I'm a handful of minutes late, but I have very good reason for it. If you've seen the top of our site, DK Pittsburgh Sports, you've seen the news that I just broke there exclusively about Mason Rudolph being contacted by the Steelers directly, including his representation about a return to Pittsburgh. If you didn't see that, first off, I'm really mad at you. Like, for example, Jeff Rossi comes in and says, I hope DK brings some updates with him. I'm not finding anything online. Where are you looking online, Jeff? Where are you going that you aren't coming to our site, my man? Like, where are we not on one of your stops on the tour or something here? I was in a pretty good mood here because, that's kind of how stuff goes in this business. You get a little excited whenever you have a chance to put something out there that nobody knows. So here's what I've got. Not to, rehash the whole report here for you, but plain and simple, Omar Khan did reach out to that side and let them know that the Steelers are interested in bringing Mason back. Mason is a free agent. Obviously not one of the higher profile free agents, where he would have been discussed long before this. And the goal there is to have him in kind of a support role for, in all likelihood, Aaron Rodgers. That was the name that came up. We'll see whether or not that gets done. So if you think about Rodgers, you think about his age, I believe he's going to be 42 years old. You would think that his chances of logging all 17 games are minimal at best. Not that you wish it on him or anything. It's just that's practical to prepare that way. And that Mason would basically be in there in kind of a 1A role. He knows the team knows him. He knows most of the offense knows him. I'm talking about the players, of course, not Arthur Smith and the scheme. So that's what you're looking at. That's what you're looking at. And if that were to happen, I'd probably be in a good enough mood that I would be able to forgive Jeff Rossi here. Oh, now he comes back. I'm working here, DK. I was hoping it did. Nah, the YouTube algorithm. Get out of here blaming the algorithm. Evan says here, and then we're gonna bring in Chris after this. Are we really acting like Rudolph is the answer? Evan, why are you doing that, man? Nobody said that. Nobody suggested that. In fact, what you just heard me say is that the Steelers would welcome him in a support role. Okay. And all of these conversations that we have regarding all of these quarterbacks, including Justin Fields before he signed elsewhere, were about context. We're about circumstances. You're not operating in a vacuum. If you were, you would just go out and get Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow and Josh Allen and have yourself a quarterback room. It's not how it works. Also irrelevant, Elizabeth says, welcome back, Mason. It's not done yet. He has another contact to make with the team. We'll see probably at some point today. All of this is going to happen fast. All of it. And that includes the Rodgers stuff. So, Mark Cunningham is asking why our headline here has a question or has an exclamation point, not the question mark that was requested. We don't know that he's coming back. It was supposed to be a question mark. Forgive us. We'll see if it can be replaced by the second segment or something. We will replace it on the thumbnail later for sure. And Denny says here before we get to Chris, Mason is a character guy, no ego. He's also no maintenance. Not low maintenance. He's no maintenance. And he showed something to a lot of people. There have been fans here, including on this program, asking repeatedly, what about Mason? Why not Mason? What about Mason? Charlie says, I would be happy with Mason. I don't think Russ is any better, maybe Rodgers, but that's too much of a headache. Mason wouldn't be the starter. I really don't believe that he'd be the starter. You could do this in a way where you structure it so that you have Rodgers or whoever that at number one, you have Mason behind him, then you go and you get yourself a young guy and you make a project out of them, whatever that happens to be. Brent gets it right. Bookmark DK Pittsburgh Sports, unlike Jeff Rossi, and make it your first bookmark. When we come back, Chris Halleck will. Oh, look, she did the question mark. You see that? She's so fast. Chris Halleck will be joining us.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
Oh, boy. Joined now by Chris Halleck. And it was a pretty eventful 14, 15 minutes before starting this show. And poor Chris has been sitting there waiting for me to get this done for a while now. Angel says to give Evan his 99 cents back. We don't need that negativity. No, we like Evan. I don't have a problem with Evan. And negativity is totally okay here. It's been nothing but negative for 48 hours, Chris. Am I wrong?
No joke. I mean, ever since Justin Fields agreed to the contract with the Jets, you would have thought that Justin Fields was the next coming of Terry Bradshaw or something like that. You know, that they let a bona fide franchise quarterback walk. Whenever we've been saying all offseason that they're not going to get their quarterback of the future this offseason.
He was the only one that offered that chance. Exactly. And that's been the point. That's been the point all along. Mm-hmm. Rochelle comes in and says, DK called all of us Mason callers delusional yesterday. Yeah, I did. Can I share the embarrassing story with you here? I'm going to be careful about how I word this. I didn't know he was a free agent until I got this call today. I had no idea. Like, I thought he signed a 2-year deal with the Titans. I thought he was still their property. So I really thought when this call was incoming that it was going to be about Dan Moore signing with the Titans or something like that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So instead, anyway, whatever. It's been a crazy half hour. So yes, Rochelle, I called you delusional because I didn't think he was available. As it is, you know, I'm eager to hear what you guys have to say about the arrangement that was presented to me in this conversation, where you'd have someone, a one, and it's, I mean, we're really running out of potential ones here if it's not Rodgers. Yeah. Mason at 2, and then, you know, possibly some sort of youngster at 3.
Yeah, I think like the tongue-in-cheek joke that's going around right now with Skylar Thompson being already under contract. It's like, well, understand that he's on a futures contract, and he's probably QB4 by the time training camp rolls around. So I don't think he's going to be in the mix. It wouldn't surprise me if, based off of this, that there you go, Jeff. Good job. This won't happen again. I've installed the app.
I've installed the app. We love you, Jeff. He took so much grief in that segment.
But yeah, no, it would not surprise me, obviously, if they had brought back either Rodgers or Russ. Now, again, going to maintain what you've reported, what I've reported, that there are people in the organization who don't want Russ back. I also do believe, and I'm continuing to reach out to people about this, so I don't have anything hard on this yet, but if Rodgers drags this out, which by all means, that's not some sort of bold prediction that he won't do that. He absolutely could do this. It's Aaron Rodgers, and I am hard-pressed to find a quarterback with a bigger ego right now. It would not surprise me if the Steelers just said, you know what, we're not waiting around anymore. We're just going to bite the bullet and bring back Russ for another year, because we know the 26 draft is a lot stronger than the 25 draft. So, again, more conjecture on my part, but it wouldn't surprise me if that ended up happening either. But I still think that if you're a betting man, I do think Rodgers probably is the more likely option, with Mason, as you said, to back him up.
Terry Breedlove says DK has an inside source at Tennessee. No doubt he's referring to the subject of this T-shirt, Ramon Foster. I can inject more humor into this whole scenario in that I was actually communicating with Ramon before this. So when the next thing came in, I thought it was Ramon again, and it wasn't. So no, this did not come from number 73. I will say that Ramon, just to throw this in as well, Ramon was super stoked for Dan Moore to get the big paycheck that Dan knew he was getting. And to his credit, Dan knew in Baltimore and told me he was about to get paid, and he sure did. As 82, Chris?
Yeah, 4 years, $82 million, and
50 guaranteed. 50 guaranteed.
And right now that gives the Steelers a third round compensatory pick.
There's a lot of comp picks in the occasion, for better or worse, right? There's always a plus and a minus to that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, then the next call came. I thought it was going to be Ramon, and it wasn't Ramon. By the way, Ramon is a 100% lock for his show tomorrow. He can't wait. He's got some stuff to share with you guys that you're going to absolutely love. If you're not a member, by the way, I could go all Jeff Rossi on you, and I won't do that. But become one. DKPS.net/join. And what makes me think of that is that also covers the Ramon Foster show and anything that we were able to do here. And as you see, the boss puts up on the screen, that's 1,021 members. We were at 748 just a week and a half ago. So thank you so much to everybody here. Justin Shannon says, I'm wasting too many brain cells on the Penguins and the Pirates. Justin Shannon does not live in Pittsburgh. All I have to say on that count. The only people who say stuff like that aren't here right now. It's a 3-team town. Even as angry as everybody is with the Pirates, they're always angry for the right reasons, because it is that they care. So Kiefer says the Steelers are set to get a higher compensatory pick in the 2026 draft for losing Fields than the one that they gave up to acquire him. Is that right, Chris?
Yes, it is. So the way it stands right now, and I'm not going to try to sit here and explain the compensatory pick formula, because it's already hard enough to explain when writing it. But right now, because of the number of players that have signed elsewhere, which is 6 right now, we're talking about free agents that have signed, players who are...
Is it 7 now with Elandon, or is it 6?
No, it's 6, because
it's 6. Okay.
You're talking about just the players that had their contracts expire and then went and signed elsewhere. Like Larry Ogunjobi doesn't count in that because he was released from his contract.
That makes sense.
Right. And so you have 6 players who have left via free agency, and they've signed 1. So right now they're +5 in the compensatory pick formula. And Justin Fields, what he signed for in terms of the money and everything like that, it would be a compensatory 4th round pick, according to overthecap.com. So right now they're in line for a 3rd round, a 4th round, a 5th round, and 2 6ths. The 7th round they would have gotten for Landon is negated by signing Malik Harrison from the Ravens. And the other part of this is, if they sign a player who was just released from a contract, like Aaron Rodgers will be, for example, that does not figure into the formula. So that won't take away a compensatory pick if they sign Aaron Rodgers. If Cooper Kupp is released and they sign him, that won't count. If Darius Slay, there's been a lot of noise about that, is released and the Steelers sign him, that won't count. So yeah. Good stuff.
Shaka Steele says, DK, why pay Malik Harrison $10 million when the Steelers were okay at linebacker? Malik's $10 million could have gone toward Fields. Yeah, that actually would have made up the exact difference over the same time span. Okay. And why sign Malik Harrison when you already had Elandon Roberts? And if anybody wasn't up overnight, Elandon signed with the Raiders for a year at, was it 3?
$3 million. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're talking about fortifying your run defense, okay? And the one guy that you had who was the most committed and most effective at doing so is the one that you let walk over peanuts. And then you hand the difference between what could have kept you, your quarterback, to a guy to replace Elandon, while you already committed, in essence, Landon's job to a guy who, respectfully here, I mean, I respect the heck out of Cole Holcomb and what he's achieved in coming back, even being able to practice after how gruesome that injury was. You have no idea if he's going to be able to hold up. So the whole chain of events makes no sense, to the point I'm smacking my microphone here accidentally.
So for me, the way I've evaluated this is obviously they view him. Well, number one, I think they really believe that Cole Holcomb is back. Now, it's still a risk. Like, I'm not debating that whatsoever. It's still a risk. That was a gruesome injury, but he rehabbed at the facility throughout the entire season. Omar Khan said that if they would have played deep into the playoffs, he would have come back. He would have been on the field. So if they believe that he's healthy, then he's LB3 right now when we're talking about the depth chart behind Patrick Queen and Peyton Wilson. So Malik Harrison comes in and he's LB4. And I think what they get out of that now, again, personally, I think keeping Landon Roberts makes more sense. But I think what their logic here is they're filling in 2 roster spots with one guy, taking Landon Roberts, the thumper run defending linebacker, which Malik Harrison can also do, and then also replacing Tyler Matakevich as a special teams linebacker who can give you some quality snaps on special teams as well. So again, I understand, but the vitriol that I've seen over it too, over an LB4 is kind of funny to me because right now the quarterback situation.
I get it. It's a sensitive time, and I can respect that. And I think doubly so whenever everybody gets their spirits lifted the way they did Sunday, and rightfully so, with the addition of DK Metcalf. And then the next day happens and the quarterback walks away. And then you look at the rest of the landscape, which, by the way, a lot of us have been warning you about for quite some time, that it was going to be really, really tough if you didn't sign Fields. Not because Fields is the be-all, end-all, not because, you're going to win a Super Bowl automatically with Fields or anything like that. It's just that's the context. That's the circumstance. Brian Jonker says, I don't live in Pitt either. No.
Pitt just lost to Notre Dame in the ACC tournament.
Pitt is a college. Pittsburgh is a city. And you're going to be rightfully called out by none other than our own barber here. Saying it's one is a college, one is a city. John Glink wants to know if there's any chance of pursuing Jameis Winston. Sure, if you find a different head coach. Can you imagine that?
Oh my gosh, I can't.
The head coach who's the most terrified of turnovers in the history of football, getting Jameis Winston to just fling the ball all over the place. But then I say that, and they did go get Mitch Trubisky. So
I still think I think Mitch Trubisky takes care of the football better than Jameis Winston does.
Almost everybody does. Almost everybody does. Where's that? Yeah, I know.
Lou's reaction was my reaction.
Lou says, why did they let Landon walk? It's stupid. Well, did you get any sense from anybody, Chris, because I didn't, and I'm double checking with you here, that there's anything that they saw in his play of slowing down, or was he 32 years old? Or losing any edge to his game? I thought he was their very best defender in the playoff game in Baltimore. The last game they played, the last time we laid eyes on the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I'll probably get a much better sense of that. The owners' meetings is a great place for me to kind of learn that kind of stuff, because that's after because right now, trying to talk to anybody on the inside right now, they're so wrapped up with free agency and everything that's going on right now. It's kind of like around draft time. It's kind of a whirlwind, and you get there's a long time between answers to texts and everything like that. When you're at the owners' meetings, things are calmed down a little bit. The roster's a little bit more solidified, not completely, obviously, because there's still the draft coming up and everything, but I'll probably find out more information on that. But again, my initial reaction to it is they're filling in 2 roster spots with one guy, and that to me is the most logical way to approach it for right now.
Because of special teams, yeah, and then that's where Mark Robinson gets involved and other guys like that, and we'll see how all that stuff shakes out too, because Mark Robinson's a lot younger. Robinson has a freakish ability to pursue the football. There's other parts of his game that aren't necessarily as strong, notably the coverage and all that other stuff here. If you missed the top of the show, I'm reporting exclusively that the Steelers have contacted, and directly so, Mason Rudolph and his representation about a return to Pittsburgh. Within that, the what's the word I'm looking for here? The scenario that's being outlined is that somebody else, presumably, and the name came up, Aaron Rodgers, would be number one. Mason would, in that sense, function as a 1A, as a backup. He might play 0 games. He might play 16 and a half. Yeah. Okay, if Rodgers' season goes the way it did a couple of years ago in New Jersey. So what you have is Rodgers, in that case, I'm being hypothetical here. Rodgers, Rudolph, and then somebody else. It might be, who knows? It might be Skylar Thompson not coming off the futures. It might be somebody. No, I'm serious. I mean, it could be. It could be somebody that you take in the draft. It might be a project. It might be. What's the new Brandon Whedon's name again?
Tyler Shock.
Tyler Shock. I keep forgetting his name. The old guy in the draft. Not nearly as old as Whedon was. I think Whedon was wasn't he like?
I honestly don't even remember how old Brandon Whedon was.
Honestly. I want to say he was either 28 or 26. It was one of those two. Maybe somebody will know that whenever Cleveland shook up the football world and took an old guy in the first round. But that's the outlook here. So if you have Milko says Patrick Queen was sick in Baltimore, wasn't he? Tell him, Chris.
And yes, very, very much. I remember walking up to him in the locker room.
Terrifying being near him. Okay. Yeah. Like, and all I'm thinking is I'm going to take this stuff home to my family, whatever it is that he's got.
Yeah. He was awful.
He was a mess.
Yeah. He was awful.
Yeah. And people need to keep in mind that these are humans. And sometimes when they're not playing well, there's something wrong with them, not just necessarily physically or an injury, but sometimes they're just sick.
Yeah.
You know, that does happen.
That was not just the sniffles either. That was
serious. Dr. Shadow says Rudolph and Fields should never want to play for Tomlin after the way they were treated. You can say that. I can say that. Chris can say that. Anybody who's watching this can say that. The only two votes that count on this are their own. And I've not ever heard anything from either of those two in extensive conversations with both that constituted a negative syllable about Tomlin or his coaching or how he handled them or anything. So I don't know what to tell you. And I'm talking about on the record, off the record, anything. Okay. So I know that makes this whole storyline sexier, to get into the drama and everything, but I don't necessarily believe, that it's a real thing here. Frank Rice says Mason has always been a great deep ball thrower going back to his time in Oklahoma when he had James Washington. And now he has not one, but two deep threats. I would posit that he has three because of the way we saw Calvin Austin occasionally blow the top off defenses as well in the 2024 season.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the one great thing you have in both DK Metcalf and George Pickens is that you can put either one of them in the slot and have Calvin line up on the outside on any given play. There were plenty of times in which DK Metcalf lined up in the slot and they would run something where he's running a go route and he would end up just blowing right past whichever slot corner was on him because that's a gigantic mismatch. And so you could have DK Metcalf in the slot, do whatever. You could have Calvin line up on the outside, or you could have Calvin line up in the slot and he's the one who runs the go route while DK runs some sort of quick curl or a drag or something like that. And yeah, I mean, there's a number of different things you can do when you have two outside weapons like George and like DK. So it's very interesting. Yeah, It's interesting what Arthur Smith is going to be able to cook up, but right now they need somebody who could throw them the football.
Dom says it feels like Aaron Rodgers is handcuffing this team to make other moves. In this case, no. Okay, I mean, to an extent, yes, but the handcuffs were self-applied. Okay, I mean, this is a situation that the Steelers brought onto themselves. Mm-hmm. So now they're stuck with if Rodgers is the last man standing, okay, if he's the last QB1 out there, the entire planet, and it's just the Steelers and it's just the Giants, he doesn't have to do anything. He can go to the beach.
Yep.
Okay, he can take as long as he wants. Now the Steelers don't have to wait. The Giants don't have to wait, but he's not in any rush. He can actually just go right ahead and retire if he wants.
Again, I think that's why this entire time, even though there are people in the organization who don't want Russ back, why they've kept that line of communication open, why they haven't burned that bridge. Because imagine if they had. Imagine if there was absolutely no way that Russell Wilson's coming back. Right now, you'd be in Aaron Rodgers or bust because any of your other options are hoping the Falcons make Kirk Cousins available, or maybe you're going to really swing for the fences and trade for Joe Milton III from the Patriots, who, yes, he's very intriguing, but my gosh, you're talking about a raw quarterback who needs development.
You're not going through 17 games in 2025 with that guy there. With all due respect to what it is that he might be able to do. This is why, this scenario that was presented to me before coming on live felt more plausible. Okay. Where it was just, all right, here's a guy, here's another guy, and then here's a young guy. Mm-hmm. That's realistically where this stuff's going to have to go. It just is. I have a good question here from Cody. Cody Craven says, why do we seem to downplay Mason Rudolph's performance at the end of the 23 season? He played great for what he had. It was a different environment, obviously a different, I was going to say coordinator, but there were actually a couple coordinators at the time. Mm-hmm. And he was doing a lot in terms of working with Najee Harris. He was working with Pat Freiermuth. He was working with George Pickens. I feel Mason was the first one to really bring out Pickens' different portions of his skill set. And that's something that Mason told me he was proud of. That he not of himself, that he was proud of George, because he was pushing George. George, I don't want you just doing a straight line here. I want you coming in. I want you coming back to me. I want you doing different things. Do some slants here, do some catch and run. And George did those things, and George did them well. And it's a big reason the Steelers went on the run that they did and made the playoffs. And then I thought they carried themselves at least pretty well in the playoff loss in Buffalo. I am not the one you're looking at, Cody. I am not the one to downplay what Mason did. I love the way he rallied the team. I love the way he presented himself as a leader. Did he go to Nashville and have the greatest season? No, he had some opportunities. Will Levis didn't rise up the way the Titans had hoped. Mason went in there, but my goodness, you want to talk about a roster that's lacking on offense. Go look at what the Titans were doing. Chris, you talked about that a lot during the season. The Titans really didn't have much.
They were not a good football team. There's a reason why they're picking first overall.
And there's also a reason they're paying Dan Moore $82 million to show up. They just couldn't do anything. They couldn't get anything going.
No, they couldn't. I'm not saying that this is a reason why, but you have to think also from Mike Tomlin's perspective, possibly. Mike Tomlin was also the head coach during the 2019 season in which Mason Rudolph couldn't keep a starting job over Duck Hodges. And that's not something that a head coach just forgets. Now granted, I think Mike Tomlin is also very, he had
his head clubbed by Myles Garrett. I mean, remember him coming off the field with the single, looking, 1948 looking.
They had to take the face mask off. Yeah.
They had to peel it off. I mean, he was so young at the time. He got thrust into starting. I would really hope that somebody has overcome that. And again, I'll remind here, it's the Steelers who reached out to Mason's camp today. Yep. Mm-hmm. Okay, so somebody somewhere in that building still feels good about him.
And there's plenty of reason they should, because to that point, he did close out that 2023 season very well. I mean, he played really well. I mean, we're not talking about just, passer rating and traditional stats. We're talking about all of the advanced analytics were really good too. I think the reason why they probably didn't capitalize on this because they were trying to aim a little higher than just a 4-game sample size. They were going with, more pedigree in Russell Wilson. They were going for more upside in Justin Fields than just a really good 4-game sample size. So if they bring Mason back and he ends up getting some sort of extended playing time, and he picks up right where he left off in this offense because they've got weapons that can be utilized, and they're probably going to add a running back in the draft to pair with Jaylen Warren. And you would hope that the offensive line gets better because they're going to be another year older together. Who knows, man? Maybe he proves himself to be a pretty darn good backup or even a fringe starter in this league.
Useless Knowledge says Rodgers won't be listening to Arthur Smith. You know what? You know something? Coordinators are funny when they get quarterbacks like that. Okay, and Art really wasn't all that different whenever Week 7 came around. Mm-hmm. Okay, when it was thrust upon him that he was going to have a different quarterback, and he had done all this scheming and everything else and building up, of the offense around, around Fields. Now, all of a sudden, he has to do something completely different, which it really was. What did he do? Just you talked about it at the time, Chris. I remember you getting vivid in your descriptions. This is something he never would have done with Justin. This is something that he's doing specifically for Russ. That's what you do. You're not reinventing Aaron Rodgers if he comes here. It's the other way around. That's just common sense.
Yeah, an offensive coordinator as seasoned as Arthur Smith knows that you can't just make a quarterback fit into your system, especially if it's a veteran quarterback. Now, if you draft a quarterback, obviously you can, shape him and mold him into what you want him to play as. But when you pick up a veteran quarterback, you have to play to their skill set because they're not changing. They got to where they are. Russell Wilson got to where he is, playing the way he's played throughout his entire career, which is why Arthur Smith tailored the offense the way he did. And it'll be the same way if Aaron Rodgers ends up being the quarterback this year. So, it's not going to look – if Rodgers is quarterback, the offense this year will not look the same as it did last year.
We're not making 17 games with Rodgers. Michael says, no, you're not. I mean, you're not. Let's not forget here that the offensive line has a long way to go to get to where it needs to be. Yep. So if Rodgers, he's not going to be the Rodgers that, we saw 6-7 years ago wearing orange and green, where he can just move out of there or wants to move out of there is the way he used to play. That's not going to occur. It's just not here.
I'm seeing a lot of comments about Jameis Winston. I don't understand that.
No, watch him play. Maybe, you know what it is? Maybe people saw Jameis in the post game up in Cleveland when he was putting on a real show after the snow game.
Maybe.
Remember he was out there doing 8 snow angels and stuff?
Yeah.
And everybody thought, wow, what a great character guy. He can lead. Man, you know what? You don't want that.
It's hilarious. Like I'm not saying it's funny because just knowing how Mike Tomlin operates, like you said, there might not be a quarterback that's available who's more prone to throwing interceptions and turning the ball over. Like it's just that doesn't make sense to me.
Now we're gonna take one more here today. I'm gonna look for a nice little question here to tidy things up. Here's one from Matt Rose. It says, is the Steelers' unwillingness to budge on Fields' contract, is that more on Omar Khan or Mike Tomlin? Go ahead, Chris. Give that one a shot. I have a different answer than either of those two. I'm sorry.
I honestly, the way I think it's more of a organizational structure on how they value players.
It's together.
They will come up with a figure. They'll come up with a threshold, and they might even, like the NBA salary cap, where you have a soft cap and then you have the luxury tax over the top of it. They may even have like a soft threshold and then absolutely we're not going past this other threshold, in which they're willing to pay a certain player. And I know that they've lost out on players in the past because they value them to a certain extent and we're not willing to go a penny more. It doesn't mean they're cheap. It just means that they don't want to get desperate. And that part of it, I do respect and understand. If they don't feel that they want to be they're going to pay whatever is necessary to keep Justin Fields because they don't think that he's anything more than a bridge quarterback with some nice upside, then you don't pay that kind of money, And meanwhile, an organization like the Jets typically do overpay to be desperate. And the Steelers don't want to be desperate, and they shouldn't be.
Yeah, the real takeaway here, I think, is that, first of all, people calling him cheap is kind of weird because the cap is the cap.
Yeah.
They're going to spend up to the cap. It's more a matter of what it is that they're doing with the money. I mentioned earlier in the show, if you're giving $10 million to Malik Harrison over the next 2 years, that's your difference right there. You decided to go get ILB4 instead of QB1.
Yeah.
Same money, same cap space. ILB4. Over QB1, which should tell you so very much about who the Pittsburgh Steelers are and how they always prioritize defense, not always effectively. Chris, appreciate the time, man.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I'm sure that tomorrow we'll try to figure something else out to talk about other than quarterbacks, right?
When we come back, we're going to take care of some business here. William Dunford says, bring back Mason, and that's obviously the theme of today's program. If you're coming in late, like really late, you missed the beginning of the show. I reported exclusively on DK Pittsburgh Sports that the Steelers have, in fact, reached out to the Rudolph camp. They are interested in a reunion. It's not to come in and be QB1. It's to come in as part of the room. It's to come in as support for possibly Aaron Rodgers, which is the only other name that came up in the conversation, and possibly a younger guy at QB3. Of course, that all depends right now on Rodgers and which way he wants to go. Apparently, his suitors are the Steelers and the Giants. If there's anybody else in that mix, I'm not aware of it. You guys are awesome. 1,021 memberships is where we're at. We were at 748 just a couple of weeks ago since we started pushing on this, and you guys have come through in a big way. Thanks to everybody who's showing up here, who's been a member for a year or more. We've had a bunch of those. Joel, who came in today, Barbara, who gifted 5 of them. Those will come into accounts all by themselves. You don't have to do anything on that. Elaine's been with us for 22 months. I'm pretty sure we've only been doing this for 22 months, so thanks to her. Sasha came in today. Sasha is an interesting case. Sasha's over in Germany. And Sasha was following us through Facebook, which doesn't get you very far. It's not the same platform as YouTube is. We put the video there, but it's not the same level of interaction. With YouTube, Sasha's going to get all of the benefits that are there. So again, this is a YouTube membership. It's dkps.net/join. Thanks also to John for being a 16-month member, and some random basement podcast who came up with 5 more gifts. That is one successful basement podcast you've got going there, my dude. Everybody else, go check out DK Pittsburgh Sports for the written material that we have on the quarterback pursuit, including my report on Mason. We'll be back with another one of these tomorrow at 4 p.m. live. Also, 2 hours before that, we'll have a Ramon Foster live, and Ramon is 100% checked in. Told me he can't wait for this episode. We'll see you guys then.